My beloved listener. When your heart is fully surrendered in the pursuit of God, something remarkable happens. Your desires begin to align with His will, and the things you once thought essential pale in comparison to the richness of His presence. But even more, in His abundant mercy, He gives you more than you ever dreamed possible, gifts wrapped in peace, strength, unexpected honor, and favor that follows you wherever you go. Please subscribe to my channel. When you place God at the very center of your longing, not as a means to an end, but as the end itself, you step into a realm of divine abundance. He responds not just to your words, but to the posture of your soul. And in doing so, He blesses you with more than provision. He gives you peace, dignity, and favor beyond your reach. Type Amen if you believe in God. The heart that seeks God for who He is, and not merely what He can provide, will find itself resting under a shower of blessings it never earned or foresaw. God is generous beyond measure, and when you chase after Him with sincerity and humility, He responds with open hands, bestowing honor where there was shame and favor where there was once rejection. There is a deep and holy shift that takes place when your desires are rooted in the pursuit of God. It's not that your needs are forgotten, it's that He meets them in ways you didn't anticipate. And more than that, He lifts you, honors you, and wraps you in grace that exceeds all human comprehension. When God becomes your highest goal and greatest treasure, the things you once chased begin chasing you. He honors those who honor Him. He elevates the humble. He pours out favor not because you demanded it, but because you delighted in Him first. To seek God above all else is to trust that He knows what you truly need, far better than you do. And in that sacred trust, He gives generously. You asked for provision, and He gave promotion. You sought comfort, and He gave purpose. You desired peace, and He gave you honor and favor that surpassed your understanding. Type Amen if you believe in God. Pursuing God above all isn't about what you lack, it's about who you find. And in finding Him, you realize He's already prepared more than you were praying for. He clothes your steps with wisdom, surrounds you with unexpected kindness, and causes others to recognize the glory of His hand upon your life. When you seek the heart of God, He doesn't just fill your needs, He goes beyond them. He lifts your name in places you never imagined, aligns circumstances in your favor, and places honor upon your life as a reflection of His goodness, not your merit. God doesn't withhold good things from those who genuinely pursue Him. When your affection is fixed on Him, He rewards that devotion with an overflow, peace in the storm, strength in the valley, and honor in moments you thought no one noticed. His favor becomes the signature on every chapter of your life. Type Amen if you believe in God. There is a supernatural exchange that happens when you put God first. Your temporary concerns are traded for eternal blessings. And even when you expect nothing but closeness with Him, He adds things you never asked for, opportunities, relationships, and honor that carry the fragrance of His divine favor. The closer you draw to God, the more clearly you see how deeply He desires to bless those who put Him first. It's not about manipulation or performance, it's about intimacy. And in that sacred space, He releases not only provision but profound and undeserved favor. In seeking God wholeheartedly, you step into a story far greater than your own. You thought you were just chasing purpose, but He gives you legacy. You looked for healing, but He gave you wholeness and honor. God gives abundantly to those who treasure Him above all. A life centered on seeking God is a life that finds unexpected reward. Not just earthly gain, but spiritual elevation, being lifted in places of influence, surrounded by divine favor, and crowned with dignity even when you feel undeserving. Such is the grace of a loving God. When you desire God above position, power, or applause, He entrusts you with something far more enduring, honor that comes from Him, and favor that no man can remove. He sees your quiet pursuit, and He responds with a loud affirmation in heaven and on earth. Type Amen if you believe in God. There is no safer place than in the center of God's will, and no richer place than in the pursuit of His heart. When you chase after Him with everything, He doesn't just meet you. He floods your life with grace, answers, breakthroughs, and honor that surpass all expectation. Those who hunger for God above all else are never left empty. He satisfies them with Himself, and then, as if that weren't enough, He adds honor, favor, and provision that come wrapped in His love and mercy. He gives what you didn't even know you needed. When you choose to seek God, not for reward but from love, He entrusts you with blessing. He sees your heart and lifts your name. You may not even realize it, but He is orchestrating favor behind the scenes and preparing to honor you in ways that silence every doubt. God's economy doesn't operate on effort alone, but on alignment. When you're aligned with Him, seeking His will above your own, He opens windows of favor and doors of promotion. You came seeking Him, and in return, He poured out more than you ever dared to hope. He who seeks God above recognition will be recognized by heaven and honored on earth. That's the mystery of divine reward. You seek only to know Him more deeply, and He responds by positioning you where only His hand could have placed you. When your pursuit is pure and your motives set on the glory of God, He entrusts you with what others chase: favor, honor, and elevation. And it's never fleeting, because it is rooted in His eternal character, not your temporary performance. In the quiet places where no one sees, when you choose to seek God above applause or affirmation, He marks you. He breathes on your life in such a way that favor finds you, honor clothes you, and blessings flow in ways you never had the courage to ask for. You don't need to fight for recognition when you've already captured God's heart. When you put Him first, He lifts you in due time, honors your obedience, and surrounds you with favor as with a shield. His rewards always exceed your prayers. Type Amen if you believe in God. When you chase after God, He gives you more than answers, He gives you Himself. And in Him is everything: favor, provision, direction, and honor that no man can take from you. What you gain in His presence far outweighs anything this world offers. The soul that longs for God is the soul that is satisfied. And not only that, but God adds to it: honor where there was obscurity, favor where there was resistance, peace where there was chaos. Seek Him and watch how He overflows your cup. In your honest, relentless pursuit of God, even when you feel unseen or unheard, He is preparing something remarkable. You will look back and realize that what He gave exceeded what you prayed for, because His plans always involve favor and honor for those who love Him. Sometimes the very act of seeking God is the breakthrough. And once that door is opened, He floods your life with more than provision. He gives clarity, power, influence, and favor that can only be explained by His hand on your life. Type Amen if you believe in God. When God is your priority, you don't need to manipulate outcomes or chase after what others have. He sees, He remembers, and He rewards, often with more than you were brave enough to believe for, honor and favor that bear His unmistakable signature. God doesn't bless the loudest voice, He blesses the loyal heart. And when your loyalty lies in loving Him above all, He responds with heavenly gifts: strength in hidden places, recognition in due time, and favor that sets you apart, not for your sake, but for His glory. There is no striving in the presence of God, only resting. And when you rest in Him, fully surrendered and seeking only His face, He brings reward with Him. He carries honor for the humble and favor for the faithful. And He always gives more than you expect. The life that places God above every ambition becomes the life that God uses powerfully. Not only will He answer your prayers, but He will add to them honor you didn't earn and favor you didn't chase, because that's who He is, a generous and loving Father. Type Amen if you believe in God. God has not forgotten the losses you've endured or the dreams that felt like they slipped through your fingers. The seasons of grief and waiting were not wasted. They were planting seasons. And the Lord, in His faithfulness, will restore what was lost in ways that exceed your expectations. Where you once mourned, you will rejoice. Where there was scarcity, there will be abundance. He is preparing to give you not just back what you lost, but far more: overflowing joy, divine opportunities, and blessings that will make your heart whole again. There are moments in life when it feels like too much has been taken, too many goodbyes, too many disappointments. But God is not limited by time or circumstance. He is the God of restoration. He sees the cracks in your heart and the empty places where something valuable once was. And He promises to fill those spaces again, with purpose, with peace, and with blessing that goes beyond what you ever imagined. You will see beauty rise from the ashes and know that He is faithful to restore all things. Sometimes the losses in your life felt so deep, you questioned whether recovery was even possible. But God's restoration doesn't look like a return to the past. It looks like redemption in the present and double for your trouble in the future. He will replace sorrow with laughter, lack with abundance, and tears with joy. When God restores, it comes pressed down, shaken together, and running over. You will not be left with just fragments. You will be given fullness. God does not just mend broken things. He renews, He rebuilds, and He revives. What you lost will not define your future. God is writing a new chapter, and it's filled with restoration beyond your understanding. The years you thought were wasted are being redeemed. The people, opportunities, and peace you thought were gone forever, watch as He brings them back better than before. Restoration with God isn't just recovery, it's transformation. In every loss, God sees the pain, and in every waiting season, He stores up blessing. What was taken from you has not vanished from His sight. He's the one who numbers your tears and keeps every one of your prayers. When He moves to restore, it will be in a way that leaves no doubt it came from His hand. Where you thought the story was over, He is beginning again, and this time, there will be more beauty, more strength, and more blessing than you ever thought possible. You may feel like life has taken too much from you, relationships, time, health, or joy. But you serve a God who specializes in turning losses into testimonies. He is going to give back what was lost and add His divine increase to it. You will look back and see that what you have gained in His restoration is far greater than anything that was taken from you. Nothing surrendered to God is ever truly lost. It is only being prepared for His greater glory. It's easy to feel forgotten when life deals unexpected blows, but the Lord has never taken His eyes off you. What you lost was not the end. It was a passage to a restoration that only He could author. He knows how to bring back what was broken, restore what was stolen, and replace pain with purpose. You're not at the end. You are in the middle of a divine setup for blessing that will overflow in your life, touching even those around you. God's restoration is always marked by abundance. He doesn't just give back what was lost, He gives more. More joy than before. More peace than you've ever known. More strength than you thought possible. When He steps into your story, the places that were once barren begin to bloom again. You may have come through fire, but you won't smell like smoke. His restoration brings healing so deep, it changes not just your circumstances, but your heart. Sometimes life takes things you weren't ready to lose, people, dreams, opportunities, but God has a plan of restoration that far exceeds human understanding. What felt like a dead end is actually the beginning of a miracle. The Lord will restore what was lost, but He will also bless you in a way that the loss no longer has power over you. You'll move forward not in pain but in praise, not in grief but in glory. Type Amen if you believe in God. The enemy thought your loss would be the end of you, but God says it will be the beginning of something greater. He is a master restorer. The time you thought was wasted, the doors that were closed, the relationships that broke, He is restoring, repairing, and renewing it all. And He's not bringing it back the same, He's bringing it back better. With His touch, you'll gain more than you lost, and your future will shine brighter than your past. The years you spent wondering why, the prayers you prayed through tears, and the dreams that seemed to die, they all matter to God. He is not a God who wastes pain. Instead, He turns ashes into beauty and replaces emptiness with overflow. What you lost may never come back in the form you expect, but what He gives you in return will satisfy your soul more deeply than you imagined. You are walking into restoration, complete, divine, and overflowing. Type Amen if you believe in God. God's timing is perfect, and His restoration is powerful. You may feel like you've missed your moment or that too much damage has been done, but He is the God of new beginnings. He restores not just what was lost, but also the confidence, faith, and purpose that were shaken in the process. When He restores, He reestablishes you stronger than before. You will rise, not just as you were, but as someone more full of grace, wisdom, and divine favor. You may not understand how things were allowed to fall apart, but you can trust that God is already putting the pieces back together in ways that will leave you speechless. What the enemy meant to destroy you, God is using to build something better. Restoration is coming, not just to what you see, but to what you feel. Your heart will laugh again, your joy will return, and you'll know it was God who turned it all around. There is nothing lost that God cannot return in His timing and in His way. Your mourning will turn to dancing, and your empty hands will be filled again. His restoration brings both healing and increase. He is working behind the scenes even now, orchestrating a comeback that will surprise everyone, including you. It's not too late. You haven't gone too far. The Lord is about to restore and bless you beyond what you had before. Type Amen if you believe in God. What God restores, He strengthens. What He replaces, He improves. When you surrender your loss to Him, He breathes new life into it. He will give back what the enemy stole, but it will come with extra joy, deeper peace, and clearer purpose. You'll walk into a season where everything makes sense, and every scar tells a story of grace. Your restoration is not only possible, it's promised. The Lord knows how to give beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, and praise for despair. What you thought was over is only being rewritten by His hand. He restores what you lost, but He doesn't stop there. He multiplies it, enhances it, and surrounds it with His favor. You won't just recover, you will thrive. The tears you cried were seeds, and you're about to reap a harvest of blessing. You may feel behind, like too much time has passed, and too many things have slipped away. But God is not bound by time. He can restore years in a moment and rebuild dreams with a breath. What was broken will be whole again, and what was missing will return in greater measure. Your story isn't done. He's only just begun the chapter called restoration. The losses you've endured weren't overlooked by heaven. God has been keeping track, and His plan for you includes full restoration. Not a patchwork of the past, but a fresh work of grace. He's not just putting things back together, He's making them new. The blessing that's coming will be so complete, it will redeem everything that ever felt wasted. Type Amen if you believe in God. When the Lord restores, He makes up for what was lost and adds even more. You will be astonished by His goodness. The sorrow, the waiting, the battles, they were never for nothing. He will bless the second act of your life more than the first. The latter days will be greater than the former, not because of your effort, but because of His mercy. You may have felt forgotten in your suffering, but God has remembered you. He's been preparing restoration behind the scenes. What you lost is not gone forever. The Lord is bringing it back in ways that will surprise you. You'll gain more than you had, love deeper than you knew, and stand stronger than you ever were. His restoration brings wholeness, not just return. The loss was painful, and the silence afterward even more so. But restoration is coming. God is gathering every broken piece and crafting a blessing so big it will overshadow the pain. You will not be empty-handed. He will fill your life with grace, favor, and fulfillment in ways that make the wait worth it. Trust Him, the best is yet to come. There's a quiet kind of fear that keeps us closed off, not because we dislike others, but because something in them touches something unhealed in ourselves. We shut down when we see traits or emotions we haven't yet come to peace with in our own story. The more courage we cultivate to meet ourselves with honesty and compassion, the more open we become. What once felt like a threat becomes an invitation to connect more deeply with others and with our own humanity. Type Amen if you believe in God. We often protect ourselves from others not out of malice, but out of a quiet dread that what they stir in us will be too much to handle. But we don't need to fear the complexity of our feelings. When we begin the slow, tender work of self-understanding, we unlock the strength to welcome others into our emotional space. We become less reactive and more receptive. Compassion for self opens the gates to compassion for others. It's easy to mislabel discomfort as dislike, but many of the people we withdraw from are simply reflecting back pieces of ourselves we haven't yet acknowledged. Their vulnerability, their pain, their strength, it unnerves us when we haven't embraced those same qualities within. But when we practice the brave art of self-reflection, we become more grounded. And from that groundedness, we are no longer afraid to witness the truth in others. Type Amen if you believe in God. Openness isn't about always agreeing with others. It's about being present without fear. And the fear we often feel comes from internal confusion, feelings we don't understand, memories we've buried, truths we haven't faced. The more gently and honestly we sit with our own pain, the less threatening another's story becomes. We learn to hold space without judgment because we've done the same for ourselves. We keep people at a distance because something about their energy, words, or experiences causes a ripple inside us, a ripple we haven't had the tools to face. But avoidance doesn't offer peace, only numbness. The true path to freedom is courage, the courage to explore our inner landscape with kindness. As we do, we find ourselves less afraid to walk alongside others, even in their messiness, because we've made peace with our own. Type Amen if you believe in God. Every person we hesitate to engage with is, in some subtle way, a mirror. They reflect back to us parts of ourselves that are unresolved. Instead of turning away, we're invited to turn inward. To ask, why does this feel difficult? What in me needs attention or healing? When we respond with curiosity instead of fear, we grow, not just in self-awareness, but in our capacity to love. Judging others often masks a lack of understanding of ourselves. When someone unsettles us, it's usually because they're waking something up in us we've tried to keep asleep. But healing begins when we stop running. When we look at our fear, our confusion, our shame, and we say, "You're allowed to be here." And in doing so, we find the strength to look someone else in the eye and say, "You are too." Emotional maturity isn't about having no reactions. It's about understanding where those reactions come from. When someone makes us uncomfortable, it's not always because of them. It's because they've touched something raw in us. And until we face that rawness, we won't be free to truly love. But when we do, love comes easier. Connection becomes less frightening. Eye contact becomes an act of courage rather than a challenge. Type Amen if you believe in God. We wear emotional armor not because we want to be distant, but because we're protecting wounds we haven't healed. The moment we begin to understand our triggers, to gently sit with our confusion instead of judging it, we no longer need to hide. And in that openness, we find ourselves able to meet others with grace, to see them not as threats, but as fellow travelers, just as complex and fragile as we are. Avoidance often disguises pain. When someone stirs discomfort in us, our minds may rush to blame or distance, but the truth is deeper. They've touched a place in us that still needs care. We can run from it or we can heal it, and healing always starts with honesty. The more truth we can hold about ourselves, the more freedom we gain in our relationships. Connection becomes possible because we're no longer afraid of being seen. Emotional walls aren't signs of strength, they're signs of wounds. When we shy away from people, it's often because we haven't yet made peace with what they awaken in us. But self-compassion is the key to transformation. The more you learn to hold your own pain without judgment, the easier it becomes to be with others in theirs. And in that shared space, healing flows both ways. Type Amen if you believe in God. The biggest breakthroughs in connection happen not by learning how to deal with others, but by learning how to deal kindly with ourselves. If someone makes you uncomfortable, ask, what are they reminding me of in myself? The moment you stop resisting the answer, you step into clarity. And clarity brings peace. From that peace, you're finally able to meet others without fear or the need to defend. When we fear people, we're really fearing the unfamiliar emotions they stir in us. But you were never meant to be a stranger to yourself. As you explore your inner world, learning to name and hold your emotions with care, the presence of others becomes less triggering and more enriching. You no longer need to hide. You're strong enough to feel and grounded enough to love. It takes more courage to sit with your confusion than to silence someone else's expression. When you resist the urge to shut down or pull away, and instead get curious about what's rising in you, you grow. You expand. And that expansion allows you to make room for others, to witness their hearts without needing to protect your own so fiercely. Type Amen if you believe in God. Some of our deepest wounds lie hidden beneath our discomfort with others. What if the people who trigger us are actually showing us where healing is needed? What if the path to peace isn't pushing people away, but inviting ourselves inward? As we soften toward our own struggles, we begin to see others through clearer, more compassionate eyes. The fear lessens and love becomes possible. We are often most reactive to people who represent the parts of ourselves we haven't accepted. Their words, their choices, their emotions press into our blind spots. But self-compassion has the power to transform that reactivity into awareness. With awareness comes choice, and with choice comes connection. You no longer need to push away what you're finally willing to understand. It's easy to believe that connection requires trust in others, but more often it requires trust in ourselves, that we can handle what arises when we engage with someone deeply. Self-awareness gives us that trust. The more we understand our emotions, the more resilient we become. And from that resilience, true connection can grow. We sometimes mistake discomfort for danger, but not every uncomfortable feeling is a warning. It might be an invitation. When someone unsettles you, pause. What is it about them that challenges you? What's the story underneath your reaction? The more honest you can be with yourself, the more open you can be with others. Courage begins with curiosity. Type Amen if you believe in God. Openness is not about being unbreakable, it's about being honest. If you find yourself closing off to others, it's okay. You're protecting something vulnerable. But don't stop there. Ask what that vulnerable part needs. Give it kindness. Because once it feels safe with you, you won't need to guard it so closely from others. And then real connection can begin. Every person you meet is carrying their own confusion, just like you. When you fear being misunderstood or judged, remember, you're not alone. And as you begin to show yourself compassion for your confusion, you'll naturally offer that same grace to others. The eyes you once avoided will become the mirrors in which you see your own healing reflected. Healing isn't about eliminating triggers. It's about becoming strong enough to face them without shutting down. The people who make you uncomfortable are often bringing light to places you've kept in shadow. Use it. Grow from it. Let it shape you into someone who is more open, more whole, and more able to meet the world with empathy instead of fear. The people we avoid are often the ones who reflect the emotions we've hidden. If you can't bear to look into someone else's eyes, it may be time to look into your own soul. That's where the real work begins. As you meet yourself with compassion, you'll find yourself less afraid of what others carry, because you'll know how to carry your own. Type Amen if you believe in God. The journey toward fearless connection begins with honest solitude. When you spend time understanding your inner world, you become less easily shaken by what others bring. You stop needing to protect yourself so fiercely and start offering presence instead of defense. You become a safe place, not only for yourself, but for others too. Being open with others is not about having all the answers. It's about having enough inner peace to let questions arise without panic. When someone triggers confusion in you, pause. Invite the confusion in. Learn from it. As you do, you'll become someone who isn't afraid of other people's pain, because you've learned to make peace with your own. Type Amen if you believe in God. I never wrote to archive the memories, I wrote to expel them. Writing became the place where pain lost its sharpness, where thoughts that once kept me awake at night spilled out into something quiet, something that could be left behind. I didn't want to remember. I wanted the thoughts out of my body, out of my bloodstream, off my skin. Writing became a form of self-emptying, a way to keep my heart from collapsing under the weight of what it remembered too well. Writing has always been a process of unburdening. Some people write to immortalize, but I wrote to erase. To take the feelings and freeze them outside of myself, so I could finally walk away. The moment the words hit the page, they belonged to the past. I could fold the journal closed like closing a chapter of my life. I didn't need to keep reading the same pages in my head once they had been written down. I've never needed help remembering. What I needed was release, from the looping thoughts, the unspoken fears, the moments I replayed 1,000 times in silence. Writing gave me the only kind of closure I knew how to access. It didn't fix things, but it helped me let go. Every sentence was a form of exhale. Each page held the echoes of things I was finally brave enough to stop carrying. There's a strange kind of freedom in writing something down just to forget it. It's like capturing a ghost and trapping it on paper. I never reread those pages. I never wanted to. It wasn't about creating a timeline or telling a story. It was about finally turning the volume down on the noise in my head. Words became the release valve. If I wrote it, I didn't have to keep thinking it. Sometimes the only way I could stop reliving something was by writing it down. Putting it in black and white gave it borders. It contained the chaos. I could give the memory structure and then walk away from it, knowing it couldn't grow any bigger than the page it lived on. Forgetting isn't always about losing, it's about surviving. And writing was my way of choosing survival. Writing was never about remembering the moment clearly. It was about surviving the moment emotionally. I didn't need to create a monument to the past. I needed to extract the pain from it. The journal wasn't a place of reflection. It was a place of release. A place where I could speak without being interrupted, cry without being seen, and leave something behind without turning back. I never trusted my memory, but I didn't need to. Writing made remembering unnecessary. I didn't write to recall, I wrote to unhook. To take an emotion and pin it to the page so it could stop haunting me. Some people write because they don't want to forget. I wrote because I wanted permission to move on. Every entry was a kind of emotional exorcism. Words were never my way of remembering you. They were how I unlearned you, how I detoxed from you, how I softened the sharp edges of your name until it no longer cut me open. I wrote you out of me like a spell I needed to break. Not to cherish the past, but to stop being haunted by it. My journals aren't stories, they're purges. Writing was never meant to preserve anything. It was a process of shedding, of putting down the burdens I no longer had the strength to carry. I wrote things down not to visit them again, but to leave them somewhere safe. Somewhere words were never my way of remembering you. They were how I unlearned you, how I detoxed from you, how I softened the sharp edges of your name until it no longer cut me open. I wrote you out of me like a spell I needed to break. Not to cherish the past, but to stop being haunted by it. My journals aren't stories, they're purges. Writing was never meant to preserve anything. It was a process of shedding, of putting down the burdens I no longer had the strength to carry. I wrote things down not to visit them again, but to leave them somewhere safe. Somewhere far from my chest. Type Amen if you believe in God. Every page I filled was an act of detachment. I wrote not because I wanted to hold on, but because I wanted to release. Forgetting wasn't an accident, it was the goal. Writing gave me control over what I chose to remember. It gave me permission to grieve and then let go. The page has always been my place of forgetting. A sacred space where I can confess without consequence, scream in silence, and leave behind the things I can't carry. Writing isn't memory, it's freedom. The more I wrote, the more I allowed myself to move on. I didn't write to keep anything. I wrote to lose it in ink. Every sentence became a strand I was cutting. Every paragraph, a goodbye I was finally brave enough to say. I never wanted to hold the moment. I wanted it to stop holding me. Writing made that possible. Type Amen if you believe in God. A lifequake shakes the ground beneath everything you thought was solid. Your relationships, your identity, your plans. And in the aftermath, you're left wondering who you are and how you'll ever move forward. But what seems like ruin is often the start of revelation. These moments force you to meet parts of yourself you'd never encountered before. You begin again, not by returning to who you were, but by stepping into who you were always meant to become. Sometimes everything has to fall apart, so you can finally hear your soul speak. A lifequake isn't a punishment, it's a calling. It asks you to pause, to strip away the noise, to reconsider everything you assumed was true. And in that disorienting stillness, you find clarity. You don't just rebuild your life, you reinvent it, rooted now in truth, not habit. When lifequakes come, they rarely feel sacred. They feel like endings, like being exiled from your own story. But with time and reflection, you begin to see they were actually thresholds. These are not the moments that break you. They are the moments that break you open. What emerges isn't just survival, it's transformation. Type Amen if you believe in God. A lifequake often begins as heartbreak. Something you love is torn from you, and you're left with silence where there once was meaning. But slowly, as you walk through the grief, you begin to notice small signs of life. New passions, unexpected connections, a stronger voice inside. What once felt like devastation reveals itself as the beginning of your deepest awakening. There are moments when life seems to betray you, when the future you planned burns down in front of you. But those are the moments that reveal what you were never meant to carry in the first place. A lifequake clears the ground for something honest. It creates space where freedom can breathe again. You may not have chosen the pain, but the healing becomes your new choice. You won't know it at first, but the moment your world changed was the moment your spirit started to grow in ways it never could before. Lifequakes don't destroy your essence. They strip away the excess, the distractions, the masks. What remains is your truest self, raw but real. And that's where the rebuilding begins, not with who you were, but with who you're becoming. Lifequakes teach us that we are not made of glass, but of fire and bone and unspoken strength. When everything collapses, you begin to see what you're really made of. Not the titles or the comforts or the routines, but the raw resilience of a soul determined to keep rising. Type Amen if you believe in God. At first, you resist the change. You grieve the way things were. But somewhere along the way, the lifequake becomes less about loss and more about liberation. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this making possible?" That question becomes a compass, leading you not back to where you were, but forward to somewhere better. A lifequake is often disguised as chaos, but it's really an invitation. It invites you to stop clinging, stop performing, stop pretending. It invites you to step into a more authentic life, one not built to impress others, but to align with your soul. And that kind of alignment always begins in the rubble, not the comfort. You don't always realize in the moment that this pain will become part of your power. But you will look back one day and see how the breakdown became your breakthrough. How the detour was never off course, it was the path itself, pulling you closer to your calling. Type Amen if you believe in God. There are seasons when life pulls the rug out from beneath you, and all you can do is fall. Those are the sacred falls. The ones that show you the ground you've been standing on wasn't real. And when you finally rise, it's with your feet planted in something more honest, more stable, more true. Lifequakes feel like the universe going silent, but they're actually when the universe speaks the loudest. It says, this version of you isn't the end of the story. It asks you to let go of what you've outgrown, even if it breaks your heart. What comes next won't be easy, but it will be real. When your life splits open, don't rush to patch the cracks. Sometimes what's broken doesn't need fixing, it needs releasing. A lifequake breaks you so you can finally see what's underneath the surface. What rises from that place is not a return to the old, but a rising into the new. We're conditioned to fear collapse, but lifequakes show us that sometimes falling apart is the most courageous thing we can do. It means we're not clinging to illusion anymore. We're brave enough to let truth shake everything until only what matters remains. Type Amen if you believe in God. The strongest people aren't the ones who avoid lifequakes. They're the ones who let the shaking teach them, who feel every tremor, sit in the silence afterward, and still choose to stand again. Not because they're unshaken, but because they've been changed. You may never go back to the person you were before everything changed, and that's a gift. That version of you is necessary, but temporary. Lifequakes push you into a new evolution, into a deeper embodiment of who you truly are. And that is the beginning of a life that is both braver and more beautiful. Lifequakes are portals. They tear through your comfort, your plans, your sense of identity. But once you walk through, you realize that the person you're becoming was always waiting on the other side. You were never meant to stay the same. You were meant to grow. You don't need to rush to make sense of the pain. Let it be confusing. Let it stretch you. Growth doesn't arrive wrapped in clarity. It arrives wrapped in uncertainty and requires trust. Trust that what's shaking is also what's setting you free. Type Amen if you believe in God. When everything is stripped away, you're left with the truth. Who are you without the roles, the expectations, the safety nets? A lifequake doesn't answer that. It forces you to live the question. And in living it, you discover strength you didn't know you had. Your life can change in an instant, and that change can hurt more than words allow. But the ache also carves space. Space for truth. Space for rebirth. Space for the version of you who isn't defined by what broke, but by what bloomed in its place. Lifequakes don't wait for convenience. They come in the middle of your carefully planned calendar and erase everything. But in their wake, they leave something surprising: permission. Permission to be honest, to start over, to live differently. That is their hidden gift. If you're in the middle of a lifequake, know this: you are not broken, you are breaking open. It's okay to grieve what was, but don't forget to look for what's being born. Something beautiful is unfolding, even if it's still hidden beneath the dust. The pieces may not fit like they once did, and that's okay. You are not here to reassemble the past. You're here to build something new, something more aligned with who you are now. Let the lifequake be your reset, not your ruin. Lifequakes leave scars, but they also leave wisdom. After the shaking settles, you'll speak with more compassion, love with more depth, and live with more courage. The experience won't define you, but what you create from it will. Type Amen if you believe in God. You won't recognize yourself at first. The old you is gone. But as you settle into your new skin, you'll realize how much strength you've inherited from the storm. You are still here, and that matters more than you know. A lifequake might knock you down, but it also shows you who and what was holding you up. Some things will fall away, and that's okay. What remains will be truer, and what grows in its place will be stronger. In the midst of a lifequake, all you can do is trust the process. Trust that shaking is not always destruction. It is also activation. Something in you needed to wake up. Something in you is ready to rise. One day, you'll tell the story of this lifequake, not as your undoing, but as your becoming. And others will find hope in your words, because you lived through what felt impossible and found something beautiful on the other side. Type Amen if you believe in God.